Hey guys, it's Papa Nasty here, and today I'm doing a video about Lord of the Rings, Rise to War, where I'm going to be specifically talking about Angmar and the faction differences between Angmar and everyone else. So, first thing, quarters unlock order, right? Northern, then Uruk, then Morgul, then Eastern. This means that you'll get your evil men last. It will take a long time to get evil men, so do not sort of think, oh yeah, Kieran would be great as your starting commander, because, I mean, he could be, I guess, but you're not going to have Eastern men for quite some time. Also as well, you are going to be mainly sort of relying on Morgul Arbalests initially, although once you unlock the Uruk quarters, you will be able to get sort of your the tier 1, tier 2 versions of Berserkers. Okay, and then Morgul, of course, that's like when you finally get sort of Crushers and Brutes and things. And Eastern, your evil men. Next, our special units on Angmar. Now, this is one of the great things about Angmar, and Angmar is, in my view, amazing for this reason, because Fallen are great. They're like champions, but a little bit more sort of offensive rather than defensive. Prior to this battlefield evolution, I would put them as probably the second best sort of tier 4 units, just behind champions. And champions are removed now, so Fallen are awesome. Then you got Vanguard. Vanguard, of the tier 4 units that you can't train, these are the best medium tanks. They are even better than champions as tanks. They're just a bit slower. Next we got Spear Throwers. Spear Throwers are insane. They are the best ranged units in the game, in my opinion. And I'll go more into that once we go through these individual units. War Drummers. War Drummers are, again, awesome. Now, I've never really used them that much, but they just have these abilities to cleanse debuffs and things. They just seem really, really good. Wraiths, I've tried using them, and I've never quite had them meet their potential. But I think that there are definitely some opportunities with Wraiths. So let's go into each of these. Now, unfortunately for Fallen, I only have this crappy picture of Fallen because I'm not currently in season as Angmar yet. We're starting tomorrow, but Fallen. This is all their stats and things. They're going to get minus 2% damage received for being mounted, and each time that they receive damage, up to I think 5 times, they will gain percentage damage up to about sort of plus 20% damage. So they can either be they're relatively tanky, right? 92 hit points, 68 unit defense. So they're relatively tanky, and at the same time, they're also fast, right? 134 march speed, and as well, they do decent damage with 64 attack, and then 27 to 37 damage, and then that plus sort of 20%, that just sort of boosts them up. So you can use them as anything really. They're a very versatile unit, and a very, very good unit to use. They're medium and evil men. Which is, those are usually sort of considered the two best sort of sizes and things to have for evil. Next, we've got our Vanguard. Okay, Vanguard camps are down in sort of Etten Moors and things, and I think they've spread them out a bit more now, though, in the new map. But their stats are awesome. Their stats, 85 hit points, so just slightly less than Fallen, but then their defense is 70, slightly higher. Big thing about them, though, is that they've got full armor. Physical damage received minus 15%. This is huge. This is absolutely massive. This makes Vanguard the most tanky medium unit that you can use. The only downside to them, initiative 4, march speed D. Okay, this is where you sort of your Fallen are. Yeah, when you got to choose between Vanguard and Fallen, it's kind of like Vanguard are tankier, but they're also slower. You've got to just decide between that. Also as well, Undead Ally. So this just gives them the potential to interact with sort of Wraiths or Barrow Wights, both of which are available in the sort of Angmar zones. Now, Barrow Wights, not so great, but Wraiths definitely have a lot of potential. I'll go over Wraiths sort of later on in the video, but up to 2 undead allied formations get plus 30% damage, as well as the Vanguard as well. Right, so this is a 30% increase to the Vanguard's damage and a 30% increase to up to 2 undead formations. So you could have Vanguard and two Wraiths, and they're all getting plus 30%. So there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of potential. But these days troop marches are not such a big thing, so I don't know, we'll see. You sort of have to build a specific march around it. Anyway, next unit we've got Spear Throwers. Now these are one of my favourite units in the game. These are probably the best ranged units in the game. They are small and orcs, which are probably two bad things. but however, being small means that if you run all small units, their initiative is going to get plus 5. So they'll be bumped up from 8 initiative to 13 initiative. Their march speed is also B. B for march speed is pretty quick. That is, when you consider, say, like Berserkers are D, and Berserkers are not slow, and then Spear Throwers are going to be B. That's very, very, it's quite quick. Also B for Siege too, so they're not necessarily terrible at speed, siege damage for a ranged unit. Damage is solid, attack solid, defense solid, hit point solid. They're all, like, when you consider that Berserkers are 40 hit points and about 40 defense. So they're less, obviously, because they're ranged units. They're DPS units, but they're not that much lower. It's not like with alchemists or elves where the hit points drop down to like 25 or 30. Spear Throwers they can still take a hit. But the big thing with them, where Spear Throwers are going to be causing their damage, normal attacks cause the target to bleed and receive 10% damage for 2 rounds. Prioritizes formations not inflicted with bleed. This is what makes Spear Throwers amazing. Half Trolls have a bleed as well, and Half Trolls are generally considered one of the best DPS units for evil. But Half Trolls bleed lasts for 1 round, not 2 rounds. Right, so when it lasts for 2 rounds, that means that you will usually have 2 or 3, possibly even 4 bleeds up at the same time. So when you then attack 3 targets with Shadow, you're going to not just activate 1 bleed like you might with Half Trolls, but you're going to activate 2 or 3 bleeds all at the same time. And then you're going to attack again, and then you got your Undying, and then you got alerts, and so as a result, their bleeds can just absolutely stack up. Where the bleed damage stacks up so much with Spear Throwers, particularly as well because they're prioritizing formations not inflicted with bleed. So with your Half Trolls, they just attack whatever melee unit is in front, but with Spear Throwers, they're going to get one enemy bleeding, then they're going to attack the next enemy that's not bleeding, and then the next one that's not bleeding, and then they'll come back to the first one, and once his bleed wears off, and start him bleeding again. So you don't sort of waste your bleeds. This makes them extremely efficient. Also as well, being small means that they'll get plus 20% damage against large units. So, for example, Fell Beasts, which are meant to be very sort of prevalent in the current meta. So they're going to get plus 20% damage against Fell Beasts, and because they're ranged, right, and Fell Beasts are flyers, they're going to get an extra 20% damage against Fell Beasts. So they're going to get plus 40% damage against Fell Beasts. This seems like the perfect unit to counter sort of all those Fell Beasts or Eagles and things like that. Also as well, normal attacks reduce the target's initiative by 2, In addition, a damage dealt to mounted units +5. So not only are they going to be great against the fell beasts or eagles, but they're also going to be dealing +5% damage to medium units. So that usually medium units have an advantage over small, but this actually gives spear throwers a bonus against medium units too. So they are my favourite units, and I think that they are going to be awesome this season. Next, we got War Drummers. Now, War Drummers, they're a sort of support unit. Hit points only 30 defense. March speed C, so they're going to be faster than Berserkers, who are a D, but they're not sort of super fast. They've got low hit points at 30, low defense at 30. They're small and they're orcs. Their damage is not high, 10 to 20. That's an average of 15. That's not good. They do have 10 initiative, which means after the bonus for running all small units, they'd be up to 15. Which 15 initiative is high, considering that Dragoons, I think, are 13, I think. So that's the one thing that they've got going for them. Everything else so far is horrible. But remotivate. Each round, 35% chance to remove a debuff from 3 allied formations. So this is formations, not just the units, it's commanders as well. So you think about every single good team runs Gandalf the White. And one of the abilities they have, one of the debuffs that they have, is White Rider, where enemies receive plus 25% damage in the first 5 rounds. I think it's first 5. You have a 35% chance to remove that each round. So even though they have essentially 25% less hit points than say a Berserker or something, you have a 35% chance to remove this debuff that's going to cause you to take 25% damage, and not just for your War Drummers, but for the whole for three of the formations. So in that sense, you're probably going to end up with a net gain, even though their hit points are quite low. Now I say probably, depends on how things go. Because you might get unlucky, and that 35% chance never happens, or you might get lucky and that 35% chance happens on round 1. Whether it's useful or not sort of depends on that. Also, as well, of course, there's other debuffs that can be removed too, but that White Rider one, that's going to be a constant because everybody runs Gandalf the White. Next, Inspiration. Each round, 2 allied formations deal an additional 20% damage on their next turn. So this is going to apply to the because it's the formation. It's going to apply to the troops and the commander. Now on their next turn, so that's actually from memory, it's only actually their next hit, right? So it's not for everything that they do during their next round, but the first action that they take is going to be sort of abilities and things. So if you have a direct damage commander, then that direct damage commander is going to deal an extra 20% damage on their hit. So that is potentially a big damage increase to your DD commanders. You just have to be a little bit. You just have to use these drummers smartly though, because they do only have 30 hit points and 30 defense. So I don't know if I'd want to use them on. Put them with a DD commander. I'd maybe want to put them with a really tanky commander to make that 30 hit points stretch out as far as possible. But then, maybe you put them with a DD commander instead, and just they're all going to die. And but I don't know what you do. But if you could work them in, they have a lot of potential. Next, Wraiths. Now, Wraiths are just all these units that Angmar has are really interesting units that have so much potential. Wraiths are the same. So I talked before about how Vanguard will increase the damage by plus 30% of 2 undead units. Now, one way to run Wraiths is that you run 2 sets of Wraiths, put them on your DD commanders, and then put sort of Vanguard on a very tanky unit. Ideally as well, you run Undying in that team, because with Wraiths, okay, so they are undead. This means that they all die at the end of the battle. All right, you don't have casualties; they don't go into the apothecary. But however, and their hit points 30, defense 35. So again, they're relatively weak defensively. Damage 19 to 20, that's quite good. Attack 35, that's all right. Initiative 9, March speed D. March speed D is not great, but from memory, it's at the upper end of the D. But the big thing here about Wraiths is that they are weak defensively, but one random formation melee units takes normal damage, takes normal attacks damage in the place of Wraith. So if you only have, say, Vanguard as your melee unit, right, and you have that Vanguard unit has stacks and stacks of unit defense, then all of the because there's only one melee unit, all of the damage, all of the normal attack damage that would go to Wraiths will be sent to the Vanguard instead. And so Vanguard, they can take a hit. They're not worried about getting hit by normal attacks. Also, if you did have Undying in your sort of team, then when an enemy commander uses a special ability, all right, so say like Dane goes and decides he's going to slap everybody on round 3 with his big ability, if you've got Undying, then you're going to have Evade, because nobody's been hitting your Wraiths with regular attacks, so you're going to be able to evade the damage that would have otherwise hit your Wraiths. And so then the fact you've only got 30 hit points doesn't really matter. Also, Corrupting Touch. Normal attacks reduce the target's defense stat by 10%, up to 5 stacks. So you can reduce the enemy's defense by up to 50%. And if you're running 2 sets of Wraiths, then you're going to stack those up very, very quickly. Also, of course, you could run them as so you could go through and you could either run Wraiths on your DD commanders, because they're not going to get hit by normal attacks, and the Undying's evades should hopefully, his evades only target 3 formations, but his evades should hopefully sort of reduce significantly the amount of ability damage that your Wraiths would take. So you could run Wraiths on your DD commanders, or alternatively, you could run Wraiths on a troop commander and then deal damage. And because if you've got that Vanguard in there as well, who's sort of soaking hits and whatnot, then you're getting plus 30% damage to your Wraith's sort of attack damage output. So there's lots of potential there, lots of different ways that you can use Wraiths and utilize them. Next, the ARBS effect. So the big thing here is simply that there's 2 main things about ARBS. The first thing is that they're ranged. Okay, so they're ranged. This means that if you put a tank, right? If you have 1 melee unit and then 3 ranged, then all of the normal attacks from units, not commanders attack randomly, but the melee units for the enemy will be only attack melee. They will prioritize melee units, and so then your Morgul Arbalests don't take as many hits. This means that with Undying's evade, that the stacks will, you get more sort of value on it. They will last for longer through combat, because your tank, your 1 or 2 melee units will take hits rather than your Morgul Arbalests. Abilities from commanders and normal attacks from commanders will still hit ranged units, but you'll take less hits. And so as a result, the fact that you have 32 hit points and 38 defense which 32 hit points is quite low, not super low, but it is quite low. 38 defense is quite good actually, but it's something where it's not going to be as big a disadvantage as what it would if you had 32 hit points and you were a melee unit. Like, for example, with the drummers. Damage on Morgul Arbalest is good, right? 14 to 23 damage is quite decent when you consider that they also have dual blows for 20%, right? So 20% chance to get follow-up, and they do an extra hit of 20% poison damage. This makes them the best, well, one of the best units for sure at removing White Council charges. Because every time that they attack, they are going to remove at least 2 charges, and 20% of the time, they'll remove 4 charges rather than just 2. So they are an extremely good unit. March speed B, so they're relatively sort of fast. They're not super fast, but yeah, they're not slow. So yeah, so Morgul Arbalest. Now also, one of the big things with Morgul Arbalest and as well with Spear Throwers is Azru Core, and this is one of the big things that's a little bit different for Angmar. I mean, every evil faction can use Morgul Arbalest, but with Angmar you start off with them, and so you're much more likely to be using Morgul Arbalest. Now with Azru Core, Fleet of Flames, this is not such a great ability. There is a little bit of a quirk with it though, whereby I say a quirk, a bug with it, whereby the 30% burn damage that sort of is inflicted on targets on the formations, when that hits commanders, that will actually do full damage to them. It will, usually damage to commanders is reduced by about sort of 90%. This is not reduced by 90% when it hits commanders. It's only 30% burn damage, so it's not a lot, but it's every round, and so this is something that is just interesting. It's by itself, it's not strong enough to sort of kill commanders, but if you could find something else that also targets commanders specifically, then it could be very useful. For now, I wouldn't take Fleet of Flames on him. Raider. Now this is with Morgul Arbalest, this is a very, very strong skill, because every time that the commander's formation unit deals physical damage, and it says physical, but it also applies to poison, burn, and focus damage as well, has a 50% chance to deal 50% burn damage once. Now this will apply for dealing damage to the unit, and then it will have another 50% chance to also deal burn damage to the commander. And that's from your physical hit. Then you're going to do the poison hit, which has another 50% chance of burn damage, 50% on each of those. So on average, you'll do 50% burn damage every time that you hit with. Well, it's not every time, but on average you'll do one hit of 50% burn damage every time that your Morgul Arbalest attack. In fact, actually more than one. It's more like 1.2 because you have a 20% follow-up chance on your Morgul Arbalests. So this makes Raider an extremely powerful skill. In addition, +5 unit attack, +5 unit defense is very nice too. And Azru Core can do very large damage with Morgul Arbalests. But the best thing about Azru Core on when playing as Angmar is Corsair of Umbar, where at max level he has his range unit has a 40% chance to gain dual blows. Now this doesn't work with Morgul Arbalests because Morgul Arbalests already have 20% follow-up, and that cancels out his ability here. But with Spear Throwers, they don't have a follow-up ability already. So then they gain a 40% chance to attack again. And each time that your spear throwers are attacking, they are applying bleeds to different targets. And so if you have a 40% follow-up chance, the chance of you applying bleeds to all 4 enemy targets at the same time is huge. You can have all 4 enemy targets bleeding, and then when you attack them with anything, with any physical damage, they're all going to bleed. So then suddenly, say with Shadow, when he attacks 3 targets, that's plus 30% physical, that's plus 10% physical damage to each of those 3 targets, and that physical damage is based on the stats from Azru Core, on how much damage his spear throwers did when they initially inflicted that bleed. So this can be huge amounts of extra damage if you set up the army to have a lot of extra sort of physical hits. Yeah. Also as well, there is a drawback to the Corsair of Umbar, whereby you only deal minimum damage rather than your regular range. However, Warship Captain, right? This restores hit points to your formation and also removes 1 debuff, right? So if you can get this to 5 out of 10, then you will remove that debuff that causes you to do minimum damage. You can also remove the debuff from Gandalf the White that causes you to receive plus 25% extra damage. So this makes Azru Core very, very, very strong as a troop commander when you have those access to those spear throwers, because you can finally take advantage of his Corsair of Umbar ability, and you get to do so with probably the best ranged unit in the game. So this is huge. It is, it has so much potential, especially if you can get to fighting fell beasts, where you can get your sort of plus 20% damage bonus for small versus large, and plus 20% bonus for ranged versus flying. If you can fight against fell beasts or eagles, then Azru Core is huge. Anyway, this video's gone on for quite a while. I hope that it is useful. One last thing I forgot to mention too is that with Azru Core, if you have the Warcry set bonus, then that will affect Raider for all of the battle, not just for the first sort of 3 rounds. So that is, Warcry is very strong on Azru Core. Anyway, hope that everybody found this video useful. Please like and subscribe to my channel. It's good for me if you subscribe. Also as well, down in my channel there is, I'm going to put a link to my affiliate link. So if you use that affiliate link to buy gems from NetEase directly, then I get like a little bit of a cut from it. I get like 1% or something like that. So please use that, and then you can support me so I can keep playing as well. Thanks all. Catch you later.